I graduated from university with a degree in electrical engineering. I decided to leave that, and I went to Kauai, Hawaii, where there was a traditional Hindu monastery, and I lived as a celibate Hindu monk for 10 years. 4 years ago, my vows expired, and instead of going back to Australia, I decided to come to the mainland US and looked for a place to stay, and finally got to New York City, and I thought this is a perfect place for an ex-monk. No other better place for an ex-monk than New York City. And one of the reasons I really chose New York City was because I felt that here I've learned all these wonderful spiritual tools and techniques to live my life. So I should be able to live in a very energetic, dynamic city and be able to practice it there. And I feel like if I can practice and live it in a place like New York City, then I feel entitled to travel and share it with others. But you know, if I lived on a little mountaintop in New Mexico in a little cabin and said, you know, here, practice this meditation, then people will go like, well, it's easy for you. You know, you live in a beautiful cabin in a forest somewhere. But now I live in the midst of wonderful Manhattan, and my goal is to strive and put all these tools into practice every day. So much easier to start a project than to finish a project, right? When you start a project, you're feeling creative, you're feeling inspired, you're full of energy. At the end of the project, you go, whose idea was this? So it requires tremendous amount of will to finish, and every time you complete something, you develop a little bit more will, and you have that muscle. And will is an amazing thing to develop, because once you develop will, that same will you can use in every aspect of your life to keep your awareness on one thing at a time, to finish projects, to see things through to the end, anything you want. The best way to develop will, bring it into your everyday life, into everything that you do. Give you an example, the way I integrate it into my everyday life, I try and finish what I begin. So for example, going to sleep. I sleep every night. So I put on my pajamas, I floss, I brush my teeth. I go to bed, I sleep, I wake up in the morning, I make the bed. Why? Because I'm finishing what I start. And it takes effort to make the bed. It's easier just to crawl out of it and walk away. So I can throw the sheet on it. It takes a little bit of will, so I know I'm developing my will. But instead of just throwing the sheet on it, I can make it really nice. So I fold the blanket, I finish it well beyond my expectations. I do a little bit more than I think I can. So someday I fold a blanket like they do at the Marriott, like a double fold, and someday I fold it at an angle like they do at the Sheraton. And my bed looks great. Every time I come into the room, my wife and I look at the bed and goes, oh, it feels so nice. This is the place I rest and where I get stronger, and I made it look nice. I have a cup of coffee, I have breakfast, I rinse the bowl and I put it away. If I have enough time to make breakfast and eat breakfast, I have enough time to quickly rinse the bowl. It doesn't take much more effort. Children take toys out of the box to play with it. They have enough time to put toys back in the box. They just need to be taught to finish what they start. And if you integrate this practice into everything that you do, you start a conversation with someone, you finish the conversation, you don't leave the conversation halfway and go away. You finish the conversation and you move on. And so if you can integrate this practice into everything that you do in your life, you become better at it and you develop more will. I define concentration as the ability to keep that awareness on one thing for a prolonged period of time. So if I can keep my awareness on Eric and not drift away and think about the wedding, or drift away and think about the vacation, or what I'm going to do later, then I'm concentrating on Eric. Every time it drifts away, I bring it back. And the more I practice this, the more I practice concentration. So concentration is the ability to keep your awareness on one thing for a prolonged period of time. And that's a very simple definition of concentration. How do you get better at concentration? You practice this. You practice this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's the only way to get good at it. And what's the best way to practice it? The best way to practice it is to integrate it into everything that you do in your life. Not to meditate 10 minutes in the morning. It doesn't work. You really need to look at your life the same way a sprinter in the Olympics looks at his life. You've all heard of Usain Bolt, the man that won the gold medal twice, 2 Olympics in a row, broke the world record. I don't know anything about him, to be honest. But if I was looked at him, I would assume he goes to the gym, right? If you look at him, he's pretty ripped. He obviously sprints, he practices running probably does a lot of long distance. He probably does a lot of stretching as well. I'm sure he gets massages. He looks like he eats the right kind of food. Drinks the right amount of water, takes vitamins. His whole day is so disciplined. For what? To prepare him for 9.57 seconds. I think that's what the world record is, right? For 100 meters, 9.5 or 9.57 seconds. His whole day is preparing him for that short time, not the other way around. A lot of people say, you know what, I need to be more concentrated. So you know what, I'm going to meditate in the morning. I'll sit down for 2 minutes. Okay, now I'm Zen master. And the remaining 23 hours and 58 minutes, they just go about being ordinary and crazy. How does that work? How would you change? It's not balanced at all. So if for 23 hours and 58 minutes you were not being concentrated, you allowed your awareness to jump from one thing in your mind to another thing, to another thing, to another thing, to another thing, in an uncontrolled way, what would you be good at? The best way to do it is pick a few opportunities in your everyday life. For example, we all speak with people. When I speak with somebody, I give them my undivided attention. I keep my awareness on them, and the conversation is really brief. Why? Because we're concentrated. We're not being distracted. A 10-minute conversation normally just takes 3 minutes because you're just so focused. And out of a prolonged concentration comes the wonderful power of observation. You just become more observant, and when you become more observant, you see solutions quicker and you solve things quicker. And it's a wonderful, powerful feeling when somebody is concentrated on you and not being distracted. The subconscious is very moldable, and it sits back here in your head, and through the power of mantra or affirmation, in Sanskrit language they call it mantra, you can actually shape and create patterns within your mind. And I'm sure when you run, and again I'm assuming that you say like, I can't do this, right? You don't say like, oh no, I'm going to fail.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
And through that repetition you create patterns in your mind. So if you follow a precise technique and system, you'd create patterns in your subconscious which then become extremely magnetic and start to attract like-minded people towards you. So I use those techniques. I had affirmations or mantras that I would say every morning and every night with, and what they consist of is a concise choice of positive words. So you never say something like, oh, I'd like to be surrounded by successful people, but if I don't, it's okay. That's not a mantra. So like, I will surround myself with financially successful entrepreneurs who will teach me how to be successful.
Right.
And then it comes with the second thing that's important is a clear visualization. You have to have a clear visual concept of what the end product is going to look like. And then the third part of it, that's the most important component, is the feeling. You have to feel it, because feeling is emotion, emotion is energy, and energy is magnetic.
How do you feel it?
You remember a feeling of what it's like to experience sitting with someone who's a successful entrepreneur, spending time with them, walking away and asking yourself, wow, that felt really great. I learned so much and could really use these techniques in helping my business. Like for example, if you win a race, you can remember the feeling of what it's like, right? So if you're doing an affirmation for your next race, you say, I will win this race, or I can win this race.
And you start to visualize that feeling you had when you won the last race.
Exactly. You visualize yourself going through the little ribbon. Okay, I don't know how your races are, right? You're walking through the ribbon.
Barbed wire in our case, but
barbed wire, exactly. Laser fence, right? Going through that, and then the feeling. What the feeling is like to win that. So you hold all three in your mind at the same time and you repeat it. It creates a pattern in your subconscious which then becomes extremely magnetic. It vibrates at a particular frequency of that success, and it attracts things of a similar nature. I believe, and I've been trained to have a goal every time you sit down to meditate. You should really have a goal. Like, for example, when you get in the car and put on your seatbelt and start the engine to drive somewhere, you have a destination, right? You just don't get in the car and start driving. So the same way, when you sit down to meditate, there should be a destination. There should be something that you're reaching for. What is that goal? What is that purpose? It's totally up to you. It really comes down to what you use meditation for. In the tradition that I come from, that I belong to, meditation is a tool that has many purposes, but the ultimate purpose in our tradition at least is to attain self-realization or enlightenment. Some people just use meditation for relaxation, to release stress, for all kinds of things. So you set your own goal for meditation, but the key point that I'm trying to make here is that every meditation should have a goal and a purpose. Once you've set your goal,
the method and practice that you have should be systematic and practical. There should be a clear system on getting from A to B in your meditation. It should never be random. It should never be different every single day. The practice should be the same. Take a very simple, mundane example. So for example, if you go take a shower, before you take a shower, you take your clothes off, you turn the water on, you make sure it's the right temperature, you jump in the shower, you get wet, you put soap on, you wash the soap off, you wipe yourself dry, and then you put your fresh clothes on. You never mix that order up. You just don't do that, and you do that same order every single day. So the same way with meditation as well. You figure out the goal that you want to get to, you figure out a systematic step and process towards getting there, and you do that every day.